Welcome to our Decision 2022 special, At Home with Ted Budd. Every election cycle, voters are bombarded with statistics, accusations, and promises from and about candidates. Tonight, we're pushing all of that aside to introduce you to one of the people behind all the noise. Republican Representative Ted Budd is running to become North Carolina's next U.S. Senator, and we wanted to know more about him and his life and how he has become the person he is today. So we went home with Representative Budd and put the issues aside. Theodore Paul Budd was born in Winston-Salem in the early 1970s. By the time he was a toddler, his family would move down the road to Advance, where his parents started their family farm and where he still lives today. He was the third of three sons, all who earned their pilot licenses as adults. And even though he was a decade younger than his oldest brother, Ted says they were all close. As a teenager, he would be found on the football field at Davie County High School, and then on the business track at App State University. He and his wife say faith has always been a big part of their lives and something they passed on to their kids.
Want to shake up Washington? Don't send another politician, send Ted Budd.
It was 2016 when Budd first burst onto the political scene, part of a huge field of Republicans looking to represent the triad in an open congressional seat. He came out on top, and then won re-election again in 2018 and 2020. But with the impending retirement of longtime Senator Richard Burr,
Joe Biden spent recklessly.
Budd made the decision to try to move to the upper chamber this year. Budd says the hard work and serving others this new challenge would require are something he has grown up with his entire life.
And by 1974, my dad had bought a farm out here in Davie County, which was even more rural than it is now. And he, of course, had a small janitorial company, landscaping company that he was growing in Winston-Salem. But moved out here, and I went to school in Winston, but it was a hobby farm to start, a few cows. And then it grew into a Holly Farms, and then Tyson Chicken Farm next door, a lot of cows, and it was a great place to grow up.
Talk to me about growing up on a farm. I imagine you had some responsibilities that went along with that.
I was either doing third shift work over there, scrubbing floors, running a buffer, putting out pine straw, pulling weeds, mowing grass.
How young were you when you actually had to start helping out with this stuff?
You just never remember a time not doing that. If it was pulling weeds early on with a little bucket, and you get a couple of quarters early on in life, or if it was feeding the chickens as soon as you could. When we had a small, personal chickens, and then we had the commercial operation later. So the 50 or 60 chickens that we had, that was gathering eggs from the time I was 3, 4, 5 years old, and that never really stopped.
Was your mom helping out around the farm also? What was she doing?
She'd probably call herself a little more of a city girl, but she did. She liked to garden, and she was a great mom. Taught me so much about faith. Even when I came to Christ, it was a conversation I had with my mom. She was growing in her faith. She was involved in Bible studies in Winston-Salem, and it was on a trip back from Winston-Salem that I was asking her questions. It was a nice farmhouse, and we were new to the neighborhood. We were the new people, been here. And so kids would come over, and there was a teacher that would just give a Bible study once a week. But I was a little kid, and I was supposed to have been to bed, but I was there listening to him teaching the big kids, which were middle schoolers, but they were big to me. They were my two older brothers. And so I was curious about that, asked lots of questions about faith, and that's when I trusted Christ as my Savior.
Was religion and faith something that was talked about a lot in your home?
It was very open. I mean, we went to church every Sunday, but it was a mixture of just hard work and values of whether it's agriculture hard work or starting entrepreneurial ventures in the city and a janitorial company, talking numbers, talking faith. It was just all integrated. It wasn't a different section of our life. It was just always there.
You mentioned your brothers. Talk to me about your siblings.
Sure. I have one that's 8 and one's 10 years older. And oldest brother runs the family business. I've been out of that for 20 years or so. I've been on my own. Middle brother went into the military, became a helicopter pilot, went to Korea, flew Blackhawks, and they're both aviators. All three of us are actually pilots, but the oldest one kind of led the way. When he was 16, he soloed and then has been in aviation, and we learned a lot from our oldest brother.
They're a little bit older than you. Were you guys close growing up? I mean, 10 years older is a lot when you're a little kid.
I would say we're they picked on me a lot, but we were always close. We're still close today. We're all very different, but we're very close.
Bud says school wasn't his thing when he was younger, but a love for learning grew as he got older, with him ultimately ending up with 2 post-secondary degrees. Let's talk a little bit about school. Were you the type of kid who liked to go to school?
I didn't like school growing up. I mean, I did good, in school, but I did well in school, but I wasn't, I didn't love academics. But later on, I mean, after college, towards the end of college, you get into your major. For me, it was business. And that's kind of where I found home. But I was also interested in faith. So afterwards, I went to Dallas Theological Seminary. But I still loved business, so I went and got an MBA later on. But I figured the more you get revolved around your purpose and your major, then the better you can do.
Were you a kid who got involved in activities, sports, while you were in school?
I really liked working on cars, trucks, tractors. I was very mechanical, but I was encouraged to play sports. So I played football starting in about 7th, 8th, 9th grade and all the way through high school at Davie High School out here. And it was something you were supposed to do. I liked it. I didn't love it. I was good at it. I wasn't great at it. And I was on the offensive line. One year, I think my senior year, we went to the state championships, and West Charlotte was really big. They were a great ball team, and I really rung our bell. But we had a great time.
Bud says when he looks back, there are a lot of lessons that were passed on to him from his parents. And he says now, married nearly 2 decades himself, there was a lot he learned by example from his mom and dad. You talked a little bit about your mom and faith, but when you look back at your childhood, what lessons do you feel like you learned from your parents that you still hold on to today?
Well, they've been married over 60 years. So I think the value of relationships, taking care of one another, the value of family, they've always been there for us through thick and thin. They've been there for each other. And good times, tough times, good health, poor health. And they're an amazing couple. They work hard in their own respects, and yet they're gracious and loving. So I think kind of that disposition is just one to treasure forever. And I'm honored they're all in great health, and we get to see them, as often as we can. So everybody always leans one way or the other. Were you more of a mama's boy or a daddy's boy? That's a great question. I'm going to answer with a decided yes. No, look, I love to cook. I love to work in the house, and I also love to work on cars and outside. So I've just got the best of both worlds with a great mom and a great dad, and they're very different. They have very different backgrounds, but they work well together. And it's, for me, I know there's a lot of great parents out there, but to me, they're the perfect parents.
Bud says he knew his next step after high school would be college. And it was during the summer after his freshman year when he took a mission trip that he started to use that lesson that he learned from his parents. Stay with us. We continue At Home with Ted Budd right after this break. Welcome back. Tonight we're at home with Ted Budd. We are pushing the election issues aside for the evening as we get to know the candidate asking for your vote. Current Congressman Ted Budd is running to become North Carolina's next U.S. Senator. After growing up on a farm in Davie County, he didn't go too far away to continue his education. But it was a big trip across the world that would end up changing his life forever. After high school, did you know for sure I'm going to college when you were done with high school?
I did. I mean, I had thought about maybe going in the military, but that was just because I had an older brother in the military at the time. But it really was about going to college, and I was at High Point where my dad had gone in the 1960s, or was at Appalachian where my brother went, and so I kind of looked at both of those. I didn't really realize there was other options.
You're in North Carolina and you didn't know there were other options?
It's hilarious. But I went to Appalachian State because I wanted to go into the industrial arts program. I was the president of the industrial arts club in high school, and so I wanted to build things. But I never took one class when I went to Appalachian. I went right into the business program. And on my own personal time, I continued to build and craft things and work on cars, but never did it as a curriculum. So I just went right into the business track there. And it was a great program. I'm still in touch with some of the professors today.
Bud had to look no further than his father to see the work that goes into being a business owner. And while he would not ultimately stay with the family business later in life, he did go on to open his own business, currently the owner of a gun store in the Triad. While you were doing this, was your thought that you would start your own business?
I really thought I would go into the family business, which for a time, I did, and then went out on my own. And so that was my inclination at first.
Learning wouldn't stop for Bud after App State. In fact, he would go back to his religious roots that started when he was a child and would help to lead him to his next step in life. And almost immediately after graduation, he would go on to continue his education at the Dallas Seminary, concentrating on an education background while he was there. Talk to me about going through that seminary. What was that like for you? What was that experience?
It was some of the greatest professors ever. I mean, many seminaries get a nickname of cemetery because it's all head, little heart. This place had both, a lot of head knowledge. I mean, I was, we were later would travel to Israel. I had to have 4 semesters of Hebrew and 5 semesters of Greek. That was for the THM program. And the professors, they really cared about the students. And there were people that you've seen on either TV or radio. This would have been Chuck Swindoll, Howard Hendricks. Many of them had been well-known speakers. Tony Evans was, from Oak Cliff Bible, just phenomenal leaders. And it just, and then plus people coming from all over the world. People were coming to the U.S. and learning English so that they could go to Dallas Seminary to learn Greek and Hebrew and biblical studies. It was phenomenal, the array of people that we were able to meet.
It was later in life when Bud would go on to get his master's degree. That would be from Wake Forest University. But it was his time in college, just after his freshman year, when his love for faith would lead him to the love of his life. It started when he went on a mission trip with a group now known as Crew.
And there'd be, 100 people a week or so that we would gather at App State. There were all different campuses. But we had a great opportunity after my freshman year, which was the summer of '91, to go to the USSR. It was adventurous, it was a little scary. And as we look at our history, 2 things happened when I was there in August of '91. It was the Iron Curtain began to collapse. And we were in 3 cities. We were in Moscow, Leningrad, which was changing its name to St. Petersburg at the time, and we were in Kiev, which is, we remember, was part of the Soviet Union. And now it's interesting as we look through today's lenses, what Putin is trying to unravel of the freedoms that they gained later in '91 at that point. But the beginning of the falling apart of the Iron Curtain was when we were there. So that's the first thing. The second thing that happened was I met my wife, Amy Kate. And a lot of people say, like, that's amazing. How's her English? You met her in Russia? I go, it's great. She's a coal miner's granddaughter from West Virginia.
We meet Amy Kate when we come back. She joins Representative Ted Budd to talk about their life together. At Home with Ted Budd continues right after this break. Welcome back. Tonight we're at home with Ted Budd. Since he stepped into the political arena 7 years ago, he has had a constant cheerleader and partner by his side. He and his wife, Amy Kate, have been married for nearly 3 decades, and they have 3 children together. Amy Kate joined us for our conversation. He was just talking about going on his mission trip and meeting you. So let's hear this from your perspective. You're on this mission trip in the USSR. You meet this guy from North Carolina. What was it about him that attracted you?
The mission trip had 400 plus people on it, so all the young people found each other, and he was with another friend from this area on the trip, and they were just a lot of fun. And then we realized our schools played each other in sports, so we're like, maybe one day we'll see each other at a football game or something. And then we did keep running into each other at other events, and eventually he came to my door in Daytona. We were both at this Crew event down in Daytona for spring break, and he knocked on my door and said, "Would you like to ride motorcycles with me on the beach?" I said, "Yes." Absolutely.
Little did they know that the chance meeting on the other side of the globe would grow into a relationship back home. Amy Kate was at Marshall University, while Ted was at App State. But it was through their continued work with Crew that the romance grew, and by senior year, they knew what their what's next was.
So it was February of both of our senior years that that we got engaged and married. Yeah. February engaged and later married.
In August.
Their first big decision as a married couple was to continue their education at Dallas Seminary.
Thought about going on staff with Crew or going to seminary or possibly even law school. So we just thought that through and we decided it would be great for life to have a biblical foundation to go from. So we thought, okay, we'll go to Dallas Seminary, and I wanted to go as well. So we both enrolled and moved, and it was great. It was a great first home.
They would end up moving back to North Carolina after they completed their studies and having 3 kids, which brought a major life decision for the couple.
I felt called to homeschool the kids, and Ted was very supportive of that as well. And so we had a great homeschool community in Charlotte and then also back here. So that definitely changed my life. And I loved my master's at Dallas Seminary was in education. And so it just kind of all went together and thoroughly enjoyed those years.
I was going to ask about the homeschooling because that's a big undertaking when you decide that you're going to take this on yourself.
I'm going to give her the credit right here.
Why was that the decision you made?
Really, through my faith and through prayer, I felt led to do that. I had not even known about homeschooling growing up. Obviously, I was public schooled, and so we met some kids that were homeschooled in Dallas, and we really liked them, and then just started thinking about that option. What I love is there's options for each family to choose what's best for them. Sure. And sometimes that's different for each kid. So, but we decided to homeschool, and there is a great community in North Carolina. It's a really good state to homeschool in.
Ted, meanwhile, was very hands-on raising the kids as well, even serving as an assistant scoutmaster for the troop where his son would earn his Eagle Scout badge. Were you the type of family that did like family vacations and that kind of stuff while the kids were growing up?
So one of our things that we've loved, I grew up traveling a good bit, and so Ted's been a good sport of joining in. So we
lots of miles in the minivan.
Yes, many miles. We one day we were in homeschool. We were coloring the U.S. map of how many states we had been to, and so we started thinking, what if we try to go to every state? And so we started making that our summer vacation trips. We would just pick 3 to 5 and go do a little circle in 7 to 10 days and go. So we've all been to all 50 states. And that's been a real fun thing to do.
Much like the Bud's parents passed on lessons to him, Bud says he hopes he has passed on some to his children as well.
The hope for our children is not to become a certain thing, but it's just to kind of understand how God has created them, what their skills and their strengths are, and how they can create value for other people, and to maximize that throughout their lifetime, and just to have confidence that they're doing the right thing. And so to give them the clarity and the skills throughout life to be able to make those decisions that lead to a good life for the long term, that's our greatest hope as parents.
Okay, I'm going to ask you this because you probably know him better than anybody. I mean, what do you think? We all know Representative Ted Budd. We know who he is as his member of Congress. What do you think people don't know about him?
He's very fun. He's funny. I always crack up when he's had like a super full day and he comes home, especially when our daughter was also here, and they would just like start goofing off and being silly and fun together. And I thought, wow, you're really called to do this because you are coming in and still in a good mood and just having fun, being silly, sharing the fun parts of the day. He also loves to drive a tractor. And we used to say, especially
diesel therapy.
Yes. Yes. He's also a pilot. When he has a chance to fly, that's always fun. We love hiking, kayaking, getting outdoors. Yeah, it's good. It's very good.
You have your public persona. That's what elected officials do have. Do you think that there's something that voters don't know about you?
Probably those things that McKay just shared with you. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when you're out there, you're thinking about what do they need? And it's not about me. I mean, my history comes to bear. I think having the cross-section of life, whether it's working third shift in janitorial in the city, or whether it's working out here on a chicken farm and cattle farm, or it's starting a business, everything in between, working in ministries overseas, just being around so many types of people and seeing the commonalities, seeing the differences, I think that's what helps.
For Bud, he says it's the lessons he's learned over his lifetime that he now wants to carry with him to the U.S. Senate.
I've heard the saying, I'll have to paraphrase it, it's everything up until this point has always prepared you for exactly what's ahead. And so I think everything up until now has made me want to do this in Congress for the last 5.5 years, and now for the U.S. Senate.
Thank you for watching this at home. We will have our At Home with Sherry Beasley tomorrow evening at the same time. You can watch the full episodes on our website, that's SpectrumLocalNews.com. And don't forget, early voting runs from October 20th until November 5th. And of course, Election Day is now just a few weeks away on November 8th.